Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Birds pregame live, presented by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. We are here, and we are thrilled to be back at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave, right here in Philadelphia. It is a tremendous atmosphere to watch a big game, and we've got a big game going on. Eagles versus Cowboys tonight. I am Geoff Mosher, alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Caplan. Joining us, as always, we got former Eagles wide receiver Jason Avant and our tape breakdown guru from NFL Films, Greg Cosell. Fellas, how you doing?
We're doing great.
Everybody well rested? With
Big game.
Extra
Big
hour?
game. I don't know if I'm well rested, but I'm here.
Extra hour, that's right.
Yeah,
extra hour, yeah. That just meant I got up earlier and was in my office earlier.
Extra
On a
hour
Sunday?
tape review.
Absolutely.
All right.
Wow. 5 o'clock darkness.
Yeah, there you go. I know it's going to get dark early, maybe even as early as just a few minutes after kickoff tonight, when the 7-1 Philadelphia Eagles in the game of the year will host at the Link the Dallas Cowboys, the 5-2 Dallas Cowboys. This will be the first of two NFC East games between these two rivals this season. It's going to be madness. It's a great atmosphere right here at Fringe Bar. You see behind us, it is a beautiful afternoon. Great day to analyze and do some X's and O's on some Eagles Cowboys. Of course, it'll get a little chillier later, and you'll see the fire come out and the people gathered around the heat lamps. It's just a wonderful place here at Fringe Bar to not only eat and enjoy the food, but then go watch the game in their 250-seat stadium seating theater. We'll tell you more about that as we go along. This is a huge game. Obviously, it always is because it's been Dallas week all week in the Delaware Valley. But here's why this game really sticks out to me, fellas. Not just because Eagles Cowboys, but finally, it's been a while, you're going to get Jalen Hurts as quarterback for the Eagles, Dak Prescott as quarterback for the Cowboys. They don't play against each other, but it's going to be not a game where the other side can say, yeah, but we had our backup quarterback in, right? Because we heard that all last year. In fact, these two haven't faced each other since a 2021 game, and that was a 41-21 Cowboys win at AT&T Stadium. Eagles coach Nick Sirianni, just 1-3 in his career against Dallas, which actually means, guys, he's 29-9 against the rest of the NFL for his career, which is an amazing 76% win clip. Jason, we always start with your outlook because you played in these games. You know what, as a player, what Eagles Cowboys week is like. I want to put the cart before the horse here. The second game, is it always a little bit different based on who wins the first game? Like, is there always that, like, oh man, they beat us first time, our fans are really gonna rip us apart in game two? Like, does that make game one even more crucial?
Well, I just think that because of the proximity of all of the Cowboys fans that were converted to Cowboys fans somewhere in the 70s,
Bandwagon.
90s, whatever it may be, the glory years of the Cowboys, there's a lot of Philadelphians that are Cowboys fans, and it just creates this type of, just natural jealousy and hate when it comes to these two teams. Because you have some type of evil lurking next to you that's driving on 76 and they're a Cowboys fan. So you hear about it from our fans constantly, day in and day out. You just got to beat the Cowboys. So I don't necessarily know if it's, okay, who wins first game or second game. You just don't want to come back to Philadelphia and hear it on WIP or The Fanatic all week long about how you didn't execute in the game plans and how their life is over because they didn't beat the Cowboys this year.
You used to listen to that stuff?
Every now and again, you can't avoid it. Now,
Well, you can.
We can turn the radio off. We can turn the radio off. Well, you can't because
If you want to be out in public, you can't.
guys like Adam and Geoff come into the locker room and ask you questions about it. So even if they can't hear it
last week, man?
even if they can't hear it, we can't hear it. We still hear it because they know about it.
Now, Andy Reid used to say it wasn't the media. It was like when he was at the grocery store and like a 78-year-old woman would come up to him and say, "You didn't beat Dallas." And he had a great record against Dallas. And now you know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't want to hear it.
He didn't want to hear it.
All right, well, this is going to be a great game. We're going to break it down. Adam, do you see this game as important, not just from a rivalry standpoint, but obviously you get a chance to go, they always say winning a division game is like winning two games, right? Because you get to put some distance between, and really this division is basically come down to the Eagles and the Cowboys.
It's actually not only that is it important for the division, but you got the conference. All of a sudden, the Lions are 6-2, and they're coming off their bye.
Right.
So you remember now, we only get one bye that started 2020. We used to have two, now we only have one. So that's what makes winning your division number one and number two being the number one seed, because you get home field. It's times have changed. When we grew up, oh yeah, okay, well they're two byes, not anymore.
Right.
So this is also an important game under that scenario.
As someone who grew up here, have you felt this week the typical? I've always said I hate when this game gets played in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Right. It's the worst.
Like I think last year or the year before it was. I like it when it's this point of the season because both teams have built up a little bit of a resume and it gets the fans more engaged.
Plus, if there's something meaningful, we've had the Dallas Cowboys, Eagles games in the past where, okay, you mentioned the quarterbacks last year, one was hurt, okay. But sometimes when both teams aren't good, at that same time, there's just not enough juice. In my lifetime living here, growing up here, this is by far the biggest rivalry in sports. We had Sixers Celtics, which is 1A. Nothing like this when the late, great Steve Sabol said, America's team.
Yeah.
That changed everything. I got to tell you, growing up here, and that damn star at the middle of the field, when our boy Dave Spadaro spit on the star, and I know he got in trouble for it a little bit, but I'm sure people who work for the Eagles weren't totally upset at him.
Probably not.
But I could tell you that star, there's something about that star. It's the green cloverleaf for the Celtics, which we hated.
Sure.
Danny Ainge, we can go through Larry Bird, the litany of players. But growing up here, Tony Dorsett, Danny White, Roger Staubach, all the great names. And then, of course, when our great friend Harold Carmichael became a Cowboy for one season. I know Harold always says he can't live that down. People have not forgotten about that.
No, the people have not. They'll never live that down. But we will have 2 hours here at Fringe Bar breaking down this game. We will get into offense, defense, special teams like nobody else does. Can't wait to break this down game with everybody here. And let me tell you why you should be here watching this game. And we do have a crowd here at the bar, at the restaurants. They're starting to eat the wonderful food. But right here, if you can see that, I got a football signed by Eagles linebacker Nakobe Dean, the former Georgia star. Everybody wants to get a little piece of memorabilia action, signed memorabilia right here. This football signed by Nakobe Dean. Somebody will have an opportunity to come away with this today if they came here to see Inside the Birds pregame live at Fringe Bar on Columbus Ave here on the Delaware waterfront. And let me tell you a little bit more about Fringe Bar. It's the most exciting new restaurant and event space specializing in soul food, pub, and cuisine. And it's located on 140 North Columbus Ave. It's a great restaurant and bar venue. It's really the perfect place to watch us, but also to watch any Eagles game. They, like I said, 250-seat stadium theater where they show all Eagles games. Maybe not the one on Christmas and New Year, but every other game. No better way to boo the Cowboys than by being in a theater watching on a 50-foot big screen. They have a soulful menu of dishes inspired by Chef Kenny's favorites. Chef Kenny's a good dude. He's got a really good taste, so you got to come down and try it. It's both from his family and from his travels around the world. They got lemon pepper wings, a burger with smoked cheese sauce, crispy onions, fried cheese curds. Do I have to say more? I mean, I'm getting hungry just talking about it, right? All right,
I am hungry.
During Inside the Birds pregame, somebody get Greg some cheese curds. He's hungry. During the tapings of Inside the Birds pregame live, Fringe Bar is going to feature half-price wings, $8 Blue Coat gin drink specials, and an Eagles-themed cocktail. That's what makes Fringe Bar your new favorite game day hangout. So come support Inside the Birds and Fringe Bar. Watch the game. It is going to be a great time. And again, Nakobe Dean signed football. I didn't forge that. That's really his signature.
And he is still starting. Technically,
he is still starting. We will get to him a little bit later in the show. For those watching, please share and like the show, whatever platform you're watching it on. If you're a YouTube watcher, please subscribe. It helps us so much. Please hit that subscribe button. A question for us or your score prediction, we will read it live sometime during the show. All right, we will start off with X's and O's pretty soon. Want to get that big picture concept that I always talk about to start the show. Jason, you have been pretty vocal in Q&A shows about the concept of cowboying, which most of NFL fans also know as chargering, which is sort of finding a way to blow it at the end, no matter how good of a team you are, come playoffs, come December. This is a pretty good team, though. This Dallas team is a pretty good 53. Is this still your view that you see the opportunity for cowboying as this season goes along?
That is
your
funny.
term, not mine. Your term.
That's funny. So they're a better team. They have great personnel. I believe they're still one of the more talented rosters in the National Football League. However, they still haven't proved anything until the postseason starts. And when the postseason starts, that's where you kind of rectify the wrong of your past and kind of create a new narrative. It's not what you're doing during the regular season, but I can tell you this, the telltale signs are still there for cowboying because this team needs some outside of offense type of production in order to get going. Like this past week, you get a punt block, you get a pick six, you get a big return. You need things like that in order to motivate your team, and they play better. But when they're in a regular tooth-and-nail football game, they don't step up all the time. So that's what I see.
Just go watch Cowboys 49ers tape from this year, the year before. Obviously,
they got to show up in the playoffs.
Yeah, more than the Eagles, the 49ers are really their kryptonite, so they have to prove that as well. Greg, we'll get into the Dallas offense. We'll talk about Dak Prescott, of course, and CeeDee Lamb. Overarching, the difference you see in the Cowboys' offensive approach with Mike McCarthy as the play caller as opposed to Kellen Moore from the last few years is what?
I don't think it's been a major. Well, one thing I would say that one change they have made is the use of CeeDee Lamb. We'll get into that.
Sure.
Because CeeDee Lamb has lined up on the outside far more this year.
Right.
So obviously that's a change that they believe they wanted to make. And it's, for the most part, been successful. I mean, he's obviously having a very, very good season. I think I would say the way that they've used their wide receivers has probably been different than it was in the past.
Okay.
But, route concepts tend to be route concepts.
Yes.
So, but that's something that is noticeable. It's different. Lamb has obviously done well on the outside. I still think he's best in the slot, but he's had good moments on the outside as well.
Right. All right, we'll talk about a lot of those matchups later. It's interesting to know what they're doing with their wide receivers. Adam, I finish off with you. If the Eagles were to win tonight and go to 8-1, in your mind, as a power ranking specialist, are they the number one team in the NFL and the favorite to win the Super Bowl?
What I like to do, Jeff, is when I talk to different teams, and if they play the Eagles in particular, I'd say, what do you think of this team, where they're at? The providing thought was coming into the season, based on the 7 lineup changes. Roster wasn't as good. It didn't mean they couldn't win the division and go deep. And as you see, the coaching's really good. The quarterback played his best game of the season, as John T. Filippo told us. John, for Patreon, went over the tape, and John was pretty happy with the way that Hurts played, and he liked the way they executed. They're a top 3 team to me. Now, you could make the argument that Kansas City's maybe the best team. It's and they're going to play each other very soon.
Yeah.
On November 20th. But yeah, from the teams I've talked to, they admire the Eagles' coaching. They admire the execution and the toughness of this team. And everyone who watches them knows that, and we're going to have to get into this today because it's a major factor going against Dallas. The problems the Eagles have in the back end are not going away. That, when you say, how do they comparative to other teams, they're just not as good because of the problems in the back end.
Right.
That's the one issue going forward here. And we're going to learn a lot about that starting today. We're going to learn a lot because you know that Dallas has the ability to play 11 or 12 personnel. And when they go 11, all of a sudden, Jalen Tolbert's a factor, who was a complete non-factor last year.
Right.
They've got the ability to spread the field if they want to.
Oh, yeah.
As I believe I mentioned with Mr. Harbour on Wednesday night, which I'm sure you'll remind me of, and we can discuss that further.
Sure. Yes, you did. You mentioned that. And I really look forward to that part of the show today, really getting into the Eagles secondary versus this, especially with what you just said with how Dallas uses their wide receivers differently. So we will talk about that. We already have predictions coming in. Our friend Carl Stevenson says Eagles win 31-21 and makes the bold prediction that the Eagles defense gets 2 turnovers. All right. And we've got a user named Niners All Damn Day saying Dallas wins 29-26.
Oh, geez.
On a last-second field goal.
How does a Niners fan get in this?
Hey, we welcome all viewers.
Unbelievable.
Viewers help. So if you're a Niners fan and you're watching because
We'll
you
take
want intel on the Eagles and Cowboys, we're happy to provide it to you. All right, so let's get into the injury situation because obviously impacts both teams. We will talk here about the Eagles. The most important injury news that I feel for the Eagles is that the knee issue that Jalen Hurts has does not appear to be impacting his overall game. He had a monster game against the Commanders. So as far as throwing the football and throwing touchdowns, knee injury not seeming to preclude him from that. He's managing just fine. The Eagles are still trying to navigate their slot cornerback situation with Avante Maddox being out for the year. Bradley Roby is out for a third straight game with the shoulder injury. Looks like they're going to continue to have a rotation there. We'll talk about that. Also, right guard Cam Jurgens out for the fifth straight game. He was activated into the 21-day practice window this week. He was out there a little bit at practice, but not able to make it for the game. What we are told is that Sua Opeta, who has been filling in, not been playing his best football, and you may see a changing of the right guard today with Adam Tyler Steen, the rookie who was drafted in the third round.
So he did take, as we understand it, a decent amount of first-team reps, and Tyler Steen only played 6 snaps last week. Now, what we had said to start to start training camp was that we'd heard Jurgens was way ahead in technique, and that in techniques includes footwork and hand usage.
Right.
But what we didn't know is Steen would never be even given a chance to compete for the job. Jurgens, let's call it like it is, he actually played pretty well before he got hurt.
Right.
And D. Filippo brought that up. He was not familiar with Cam. He said, whatever number he is, 61 or 51, whatever number it is, 51?
Right, 51.
He said 50, because coaches always do. They don't say name, they say number.
Yeah.
Because 51 is really good. He's dominant. I'm like, Cam Jurgens? Yeah, now Jurgens has put on weight, over the last year. But clearly the sprained foot is not ready, though he started to practice. The telltale sign for him not to play today was that he never had a full practice. That's almost always, not always, but almost always an indication that the guy's not going to play.
Right.
I would actually at this point be slightly surprised if Steen doesn't play. And this is their opportunity, and we'll get into the defensive matchups versus the Eagles' offensive line. What a time to potentially start your first game and just to play more than 6 snaps today. We'll see.
We're going to discuss that. Obviously, the Eagles potentially making a right guard change at a very interesting time in their season. Also out for this game, Boston Scott. He's been out all week with personal reasons. He's going to be out for this game. He remains out. We hope everything is okay with Boston Scott. Obviously, when you see more than the whole week in the game with personal reasons, you just wish for the man's best. But his absence means that the Eagles almost assuredly will activate Rashad Penny as the number 3 running back this game. And hey, they may even dust the cobwebs off and
By the way,
Rashad
they don't have a
Penny
choice. He has to be active. They didn't bring a running back off the practice squad, but he's number 3. So he'll dress as a number 3, but will he play? As a number 3?
Exactly. I know you are. You got to be a little bit intrigued about that, right? When you see a guy of that stature sit all year.
Well, it has to be something that he isn't. It's something that he's not doing, because it's counterproductive for the Eagles organization that bring in a guy that's not producing.
Right.
So it's on him to show the coaches either he can learn the playbook and or that he's bought into what they're selling.
Yeah.
And usually it's one of those 2 issues.
Yeah, maybe he's a secret weapon tonight. We'll see. Obviously, Kenneth Gainwell is the backup running back, and DeAndre Swift continues to be the starter. Last injury, tight end Grant Calcaterra out. He had the concussion last week against the Commanders. We know he has a history of concussions that go back to college that forced him to step away from the game a little bit. He was on the practice field at points this past week, which is part of being in the protocol. You have to get out there on the practice field. I would say that that's an encouraging sign.
Well, I didn't know that. Was he really? Because that means he's a minimum, even though he didn't practice.
Right.
That means he's halfway through the protocol, because you have to get through. Remember with concussions, you have to be able to see the daylight.
Right.
So that means that he's okay. That's good. I didn't know that. That's actually really good news. But what that means is Albert O will be the third tight end. Now, we've seen the Eagles do this before over the years under Sirianni. There have been times when they dressed 2 tight ends, which is, I remember at the time we said it was ridiculous. So you got to be careful. But theoretically, Albert O should be the 3rd tight end today.
Albert O, 3rd tight end. Again, sort of like Rashad Penny, maybe we see a little cameo from Albert O. Been with the team for about 2 months now, so he should be acclimated to the offense. We'll see if he brings anything. The only other thing of note, because we talk about the importance of being a full participant on your Friday practice, is that James Bradbury was limited Friday with a thigh injury. He does not carry a game day designation, so he's expected to play. But I thought that was interesting that a corner who's not playing his best ball was out of practice with a thigh on Friday. So, we'll see how
Well, he worked. He did get some work. He was limited.
He was limited.
He'll definitely play today. The question is, and the guys will talk about it, is at what level of proficiency he'll play at today, because we're starting to see some things regress in the secondary. And I know the guys talked about it on their shows, and we talked to some people in the league about it. I think we're all kind of seeing the same thing here. You're hoping that there's not
tape.
Right. But here's the thing.
It isn't like we're just making
No. But you're hoping that there's not a regression.
Kind of there.
No, but is there a regression? That's the big issue here.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get through that.
We will talk about that. We know Julio Jones was signed to the 53 this week, so he's on the active roster. Now, with Boston Scott out, he is their main kickoff returner. You thought maybe Devin Allen would be elevated from the practice squad. He was not. The only elevation, surprisingly, from the practice squad was linebacker Ben Van Sumeren, the undrafted rookie from Michigan State, which gives them 4 linebackers active for this, 4 off-ball linebackers.
Any thoughts on why he was
special teams?
Oh, he's a demon. In fact, one team told us
he was the kid had that ridiculous pro day. He was not invited to the combine.
His issue on defense is processing. That's why he was released and waived, and the Eagles brought them back after he was not clean. But we talked to a team that told us his special teams tape was so good in the preseason, a demon getting downfield because he's really fast, that they considered it. But the problem is, it's hard to just claim a guy off waivers just to do special teams because he's not ready to play linebacker. So barring something unforeseen. Now the question, Jeff, on your point is, because Scott was a kickoff returner. Now Penny, that's right. Penny could return kicks.
Rashad Penny could be active as the kick
In fact,
returner.
an awesome kickoff returner at San Diego State, over 30 yards per kick.
Sure. Hasn't Kenneth Gainwell also
He can do it too,
yep. He can too.
If kicks ever
They're
get
not
returned.
going to return.
By a miracle. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
They don't get returned.
As a special teams coach told me on my training camp tour, it's clear the league does not want any returns anymore. They want to outlaw it.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, for the Cowboys, couple of guys that are important for them on IR and won't be playing. Linebacker Leighton Vander Esch has been dealing with neck problems for his career. He's on IR. Outside linebacker Demarion Overshawn, who a lot of people like coming out of the draft.
Overshown, he's done for the season.
Right.
From
Texas.
ACL,
Right, he hasn't played at all. And, of course, Trevon Diggs tore his ACL earlier in the season. He is out. As far as guys who are hurt, who are on active, Tyron Smith is dealing with a neck stinger that makes him questionable to play today, which really is, if he plays, that's great for the Cowboys. If not, kind of invites a question about what they're going to do on the left side of the line. Who had been filling in?
Adoga.
Yeah, right. But he's also questionable.
He has 2 injuries now.
He's a little bit of an issue, too.
Right. So maybe Tyler Smith would move to left tackle and
they don't want to do that. I checked in with us. They would do it if they had to. Right.
He's played really well at left guard.
He has shocked the world. We'll get into that. That offensive line coaches you and I talked to before the draft were not fans. They thought he was way too raw. He got thrown in there last year, and it was really one of the bigger surprises for the club. But getting back, forwarding here to today. So Smith went through they have a weird practice schedule. Remember Chip Kelly?
Yes.
Whenever he walked through on Friday and a practice on Saturday, day before the game?
Yes.
The Cowboys do the same thing for, I guess, health, whatever they call it, whatever reasons they think.
Load management.
Whatever it is. So they had a walk there. He did participate in Friday.
Okay.
And because they don't have to put an injury report out, we don't know what he did Saturday. But he's legit questionable because it's a neck stinger. Mm-hmm. And Adoga had 1 injury come into the week. Now he has 2. They think 1 will be available. They didn't activate anyone off their practice squad, so they think 1 of them will be available. But, man, if it's Adoga, advantage Eagles.
Yes. So to repeat, Tyron Smith is questionable, and his backup, Chuma Adoga, is also questionable with an ankle. So if neither can play,
and a knee.
That's not great. And a knee.
Both,
neither can play. That's not a good situation for the Cowboys. We'll just have to see when the inactives come out. All right, let's get into this game. It is the Birds versus them boys, all right? And in order to preview the key matchups of this Eagles-Cowboys game, I think we need to review a little bit of what happened, at least with the Eagles are concerned, against the Commanders last week. Sam Howell, for the second time this year, tore apart the Eagles secondary. He completed 75% of his passes. He threw for nearly 400 yards. He averaged almost 8 yards per attempt.
Which is insane. That is really high.
Yes, there was a lot of quick game element to the Washington offense, which helped neutralize the Eagles pass rush. Greg, you made an observation, I believe, with Clay Harbor on your show Inside the Tape.
Right.
And you said that maybe for the first time it stuck out to you that you're wondering about a lack of overall speed in the Eagles secondary, which is, by the way, something coaches can't fix.
I'm not really wondering about it.
Oh, the way you phrase it was, I'm a little curious about it. If you want to go stronger,
So it's an issue. Okay, it's an issue.
It's an issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is a lack of speed in their secondary.
Yeah.
I think that Bradbury, he was never a fast player, but I think he's, you never know, and Jay could address this as well, but you never know when a player, when they reach a certain age, usually over 30, when they start to downturn.
Right.
You just don't know that. And Bradbury was never a burner. That was not his game. When he came up with Carolina, I mean, he was essentially a zone corner. That's his game. He was never really a man corner nor a press man corner.
Right.
And, so he's never had big speed.
Right.
And he certainly doesn't now. And then this past week, they got stuck. Well, I shouldn't say they got stuck because maybe that's the way they wanted it to be, but they got burned a number of times when they had Blankenship matched man-to-man on the tight end. And Blankenship is not a man-to-man cover player.
Right.
And that was a problem. And then they played a ton of big nickel, okay? That in and of itself is a little bit of an issue. Now, Sidney Brown can run fast in a straight line.
Right.
But Sidney Brown is not a cover player.
Right.
That's not what he did in college.
Right.
Now, I know at the Senior Bowl, they put him on the back end and people like the way he ran. He's going to run fast in a straight line. But in college, he was a box player 90% of the time. He's not a coverage player. So now and I think we would all agree that Darius Slay has not looked like the Darius Slay of previous years when he's been at his best.
Sure.
So again, he's at the point where we don't know if he's just had some bad games or whether this is now Darius Slay. We don't know that yet for sure. But the bottom line is, this is not a secondary with a lot of speed, and they're trying to compensate for. See, by what they're doing, they're trying to compensate for it. They're trying to camouflage it. They're basically telling you that they have problems in their secondary.
How so, though? When you say that, how are they camouflaging?
By the fact that they're playing a ton of big nickel.
Okay.
They're playing big nickel against 11 personnel.
Which you wouldn't do. You'd play 3 corners,
Yeah,
right?
they're playing.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, real quick before you make it, because you made a point that I want to hammer down a little
Right.
bit, because Adam has a great stat. You're saying that James Bradbury, right, is more of a zone corner
He's always been
than
that.
a man corner. Last year, the Eagles played a lot more zone than man, but Adam
This year
didn't.
they're playing a lot of man.
Right.
A lot of
Comparatively,
stats on
they're
that, right?
about 29% man.
Yeah.
For them, that's
a lot. In today's NFL, that's actually above average, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So Greg, guys, Jeff and I were talking about this on a recent show because we got the early word from tape study from other people that they were a bit slow, their whole secondary. So I said to Jeff, this is going to be a problem.
You mean I got one right watching the tape?
Yeah, well, no, because this brings up Greg's point. You never know when guys are slow. This is what we said before the season started when they extended these contracts.
Right.
If these guys are losing it, Jeff, it doesn't matter because they're stuck with these contracts next year.
Remember the Namdi Asamoah signing?
They can't walk away from these contracts, guys. There's too much fully guaranteed money next year. They got problems.
Which is interesting.
Well,
Keep an eye on that.
Go ahead, Jay.
I'll say this, is that are there positions that are slow? Do I think that the overall secondary is slow? I don't think that the overall secondary. I just think that the 2 most important pieces are slow. So the James Bradbury is slow. Yes, he's a zone corner that is being asked to cover in man, and he doesn't do a great job like most bigger corners do with shielding their inability, their speed with their hands and their foot placement and those things. So he's letting guys get into a race when he's not going to win that race.
No.
All right, and then you talk about the Goodriches, the Eli Ricks, the Sidney Browns, those guys. Sidney Brown is fast, but yes, he cannot cover. Multiple times he ended up on Terry McLaurin. Never should happen.
No.
Right? So that right there is deployment and just lack of availability of players. But yes, Eli Ricks, these guys, the Bradbury and the nickel guy can't cover. And then they caught the Eagles in bad matchups.
Yeah.
Yes.
They caught him in with Blankenship. Blankenship is not a burner, but he's fast enough to be a safety.
Yeah, I think he's actually a pretty good player.
Yeah,
He's just
to
not,
be a safety. He's just not a coverage
he's not a
guy.
coverage
Right.
player.
You know, in the same way with Bayer. The same thing. Like he can cover, but they shouldn't be covering receivers at any time.
Right.
So here's the thing that I think about the secondary. Are there some speed issues? I just think that there's a lack of football knowledge. And that's where they've been burned. Like
Specifically at slot and safety, right?
And slot safety, being in bunch, being in zero, like the touchdown that Blankenship gave up to Logan Thomas. Right? They had a double team up top on McLaurin because he's been killing them.
Right.
They're in zero everywhere else. he keeps expanding, going out toward Logan Thomas when you have to keep inside leverage and cover zero.
Right.
That's just a lack of being in that position a lot because he's normally on the post.
So
But can I?
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
please.
Yeah.
I think that play that you just mentioned, that Thomas 7-yard touchdown, that really stood out to me for this reason. I made a note of it because the Eagles had a dedicated double on McLaurin, okay, and he was the boundary X. And I'm watching the tape and I'm thinking, Slay is on him. If Slay is your guy, why are they dedicating a double with Slay? That struck me as strange. Okay, that to me spoke volumes about the Eagles secondary. And does the coaching staff not believe in Slay to the point where it was 3rd and goal, okay, that they don't feel he can match up one-on-one on McLaurin? If they don't feel Slay in critical moments can match up man-to-man on the opponent's best receiver. I'm not saying they do or they don't. I'm just saying what this particular play was.
Right.
If they don't feel he can do that, then they got a bigger problem.
Oh, boy.
I can't refute that point. I can't refute that point. I do know that they said based on the history of Slay and McLaurin has gotten the best of Slay, and we're going to say this is a double team, and whether that be an ongoing problem or if that's a player specific problem, because that can happen.
Right.
There's times where a guy has your number. There's some guys that can, back in my day that shouldn't have been able to cover me, but then there was guys that were Pro Bowlers that couldn't stay in front of me. It's like that sometimes.
No, and I understand, and maybe that's the case.
But
all I'm saying is that it struck me as,
number.
Slay's your best corner, without question.
Yeah.
That's not even a question. Okay, whether we think he's having a good year, bad year, average year, he's still your best cover corner.
Sure.
In man coverage.
Yeah.
Right? That's a fair statement?
Yeah.
Right.
And
So now you're in a critical situation in the red zone in a tight game, and you feel like you need to help
Double
your
team.
best corner?
Wow.
I don't know.
That's a great point.
Again, don't know.
Hey, have you noticed that over the last 2 years they've done that before?
have they double teamed?
Yeah, with Slay. With Slay.
They're not a big double. They did it last week against the Dolphins because of Tyreek Hill, but they're not a big double team style team historically. But again, we got a new defensive coordinator.
Certain coaches are, but the Eagles have not done. Like certain teams, like Belichick will double. You get to the red zone, he's going to double. You know, there's certain guys The Eagles haven't really done that a lot in recent years.
But they're not in the secondary. They make the same mistakes. The same bunch mistakes.
It could play a part into it, but I wonder if, and Jay, maybe you can speak to the mentality of a player on this. When you've got so much, as you just mentioned, lack of experience at slot corner and safety, are the outside corners feeling the burden and the pressure of that and maybe playing not well because they don't trust what's going on to their left and to the right and behind them?
There's sometimes that, especially when because a guy can make you look bad real quick.
Yeah.
Because if, like they were doing, if you line up in a 3-by-1 bunch and you lock the guy that's on the ball, the other two dudes have to communicate.
Right.
If he goes inside, you take him inside. Or you're gonna lock everything. Yep. And if that can't be communicated, it doesn't matter. The public eye is gonna see, Darius Slay's got the ball caught on him, not realizing that there was a miscommunication. And yes, that's happening a bunch. Yeah. Where they're not communicating that at all, or just miscommunicating and leaving guys wide open.
And the crazy, they struggled early on with. I think we pointed this out in bunch formations. They weren't even locking the lead receiver, right? Yeah. Now I see they'll get that lock, but then they'll still get fooled by the back
multiple ways to play bunch, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
There's many ways. But, the other factor, too, is, one of the reasons I'm sure they're playing a lot of big nickel is Eli Ricks. He's never played slot before.
Right.
Now, he's a corner, big-time recruit when he went to LSU, ended up transferring to Bama. All that good stuff, long, athletic, but he's never played the slot. And it's a brand new slot. Is not just, and you know this, it's not just the same as, say, a guy playing outside. Throw him in the slot, he'll be fine. It's a totally different position.
Totally different. You have to want contact. Yeah. You have to, in order to be an effective, good nickel in this league, you have to want contact. You have to be aware of route concepts more than any other position because you're going to be a part of all of the concepts.
Yes. Right. And by the way, they're trying to do a first and second down nickel who can defend the run, and then they're trying to
Well,
put
that's why they're
Ricks in
playing
against
big
the
nickel.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it's been obviously the defense or the offense sees that and tries to adjust.
I mean, they're searching for an answer.
Yeah, they're
Ready for this,
searching.
guys?
They're
Here-
searching.
here's your nickel list. After Avante Maddox got hurt, Justin Evans, who's now on injured reserve, so you scratch him off. James Bradbury, as Greg told us and Jason told us, he wasn't comfortable.
He's not a nickel player.
Well, he's tried it and it didn't work. Sidney Brown, Eli Ricks, Josiah Scott, a minimum of 7 and probably 8, depending on how you say a guy line up inside.
Yeah, definitely.
This is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
don't forget, Zach McPherson tore his Achilles in August, or he'd be doing it. And they were unable to make a trade to get somebody. This is what we have the rest of the season to watch this football team. This is it.
So let me ask
The
you.
only
so
hope
we're
that
not-
they have is Roby.
Right. Who's come back.
That's the only hope.
He's played a lot of nickel and he
Right.
can do it.
Right. So let me ask you this, and we're not going to overreact to a team that could be 8-1 after tonight if they win, right? But there are ways to camouflage things that aren't deficiencies, and those
By
deficiencies
scoring a
can
lot
show
of
up.
points, which they do.
Which they do, right? But we also know they're coming up against some pretty good
Right,
defenses
right.
and offenses. They didn't re-sign either safety from last year, Marcus Epps or C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Right.
Right. They did not have. It's hard to kill him on slot because they thought Zach McPherson was going to be the guy, but you don't know if he was going to be a good player. He had never played. Obviously, they re-signed Darius Slay after almost letting him walk, and then gave him a 3-year deal structured as 2.
In the morning, they
Brought back
said
Bradbury.
no. Later in the day, they said yes.
Right.
Yes.
So does
That
this
means that
if
first
this-
option didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly.
If this sort of spirals and they become very vulnerable and start losing games, does this become a referendum on how Howie rebuilt the secondary?
Well, I'll say this one. I'll say this much in Howie's defense. They made an offer to Gardner Johnson. It was severely backloaded.
Sure.
Let's call it that way. It was a three-year deal, but a 1-year structure where the money would weigh up the third year. But they didn't trust him enough to bring him back.
Right.
Epson made no effort to bring him back.
Right.
It's a fair thing to criticize, absolutely. In fact, Joe Banner came on for Patreon in the spring. If you remember, he said he did not agree with them going so old in the secondary. Now here we are.
Right.
Week 9. Not only the oldest secondary in football, do you realize when Roby comes back, 4 of the 5 starters are 30 years or older? That's unheard of. No, who does that?
Yeah. No,
That's the mistake you could criticize.
crazy. And again, some of the moves that they hoped would work did not. They signed Terrell Edmonds. It did not work. They did not want to play him by the time the season started. They had to. They signed Justin Evans, a safety who had played some nickel, but he also missed 3 straight years and he's hurt.
But the last
right
number
now.
of years, he did not play in the slot.
No, I'm just saying he had some nickel experience.
Right.
Because they were looking for guys who
Because
had
the last couple of
experience.
years in New Orleans, he was their dime safety. He was
right.
not playing in the slot.
Correct.
And Lontae Taylor did, right.
Right. So it just showed the moves that they tried to compensate with did not work out. Obviously, the Kevin Byard trade helps. We'll see how that fixes the secondary going forward. Got to give them a little bit of time here in this defense. So let's talk about then these Dallas Cowboys wide receivers, how they're used, how they might be used today against the Eagles, because Greg made a great point. When you're playing all that big nickel and putting a guy like Sidney Brown in the slot, no wonder Washington threw the ball on first down a lot. He's there to
Yep.
be a run defender in the slot. So
Right.
Washington says, well, we'll put playmakers inside and throw it on first down. What was someone had a great stat about how often they threw out.
No, I got the numbers right here.
ahead.
It was Howell on first down last week was 19 for 26 for 212 yards and 2 touchdowns.
On first down over 200 yards? That's insane.
and was not
insane.
sacked. 19 for 2. But see, it's not just that those numbers are great. It's there's 26 first down
Right.
throws.
Oh my
So
God. It was
they
their
clearly
intention.
felt
Yeah,
that they
they
could
do.
attack and break down the Eagles' defense, throwing the ball on first down.
Yeah.
Because every team likes to get ahead of the sticks
Yeah.
and make sure they stop you because most people are running the ball on first down. So they just
Right.
did opposite.
Yeah,
So,
but that was by choice.
By choice.
Right,
Yeah, by choice.
So you're the Cowboys. You have CeeDee Lamb, right? Who has played, as Greg mentioned earlier, outside and inside. Whereas in the past few years, he's been more predominantly an inside.
More predominantly slot. This year, it's almost an equal distribution of targets.
Right. Would you imagine this is the game where you may want to predominantly again go back with CD in the slot because of the matchup issues the Eagles are having there?
I think CD will do well versus Bradbury because he can run better than Bradbury, and it's not rare. It's not normally on a regular Sunday. CeeDee Lamb's going to be one of the slower players on the outside. Okay, in comparison to the corners that he's going against. And then what the Cowboys are doing in order to cause him to be more productive is that when you have a guy that's not a vertical threat, you like pound the overs, the slants, in breaking routes. And he's catching a lot of those, right? Digs and slants and deep overs and things like that. Maybe a seam post, things like that in order to offset his lack of speed.
Right.
Which is, you still get great production out of guys like that, especially if they have lateral movement. And CD has lateral movement that can make you move out of the spot. That's something that he's good. That's what makes him a good slot receiver.
Yeah.
So, depending on his matchup, and if they get him with Bradbury, I think that's a plus for CD Lamb.
They've also been using more motion this year.
Yeah.
That's a difference that I failed to mention earlier when you said, what's the difference? There's more motion this year in their offense, which is permeated throughout the entire league now. More and more teams are using motion, but they are as well.
Which has given the Eagles problems.
just gonna mention, yes,
Right.
that's not
So,
good for the Eagles.
you have to decide in your game planning defensively how you want to handle motions, different kinds of motions, how you want to handle motion across the formation, how you want to handle motion that stays on the same side, whether it's in motion, Z in, or whether it's that short burst motion, away motion as you call it. You need to have a plan for all of that going into a game. You can't be surprised by it.
Right. To your point on CeeDee Lamb, 15 catches for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns in total last year against the Eagles, working, I believe, mostly from the slot. Running a lot of those still overs and the concepts to get him inside that zone, which the Eagles played a lot of, short to intermediate. So he's hurt them a lot. And I think 2 of his longer touchdowns last year came against the Eagles. He had a 52-yarder and a 36-yard.
I remember one of them was a blown coverage over the middle.
I remember one, if I'm not mistaken, they caught the Eagles in rotation, as I recall. And the Eagles, I believe, were rotating. I'm trying to see it now. It's funny how this stuff pops into your head. I think the Eagles were in split safety, and they were going to single high, and Blankenship was going to his single high responsibility, and it was kind of a corner route away from him going to his single high responsibility.
And Slade bit on a 5-yard out.
Right.
Instead of playing. That's the same play.
Yeah, same play.
Left side.
Left side.
So Dallas does play. They alternate between a lot of 11 and 12. They will put a good amount of 12 there.
They absolutely do.
If you're Mike McCarthy and you think your 12 personnel is going to draw out the big nickel, are you happy about that, or do you want to try to catch them? I mean, can they throw the ball well out of 12, because that would be an advantage?
They can.
Their advantage though would be to go 11.
But then you put the Eagles in conventional nickel, right? And you don't have Sidney Brown in the slot.
Not necessarily. On first down, the Eagles played big nickel versus 11.
Even against 11 against Washington?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That doesn't matter. And then we say, you talk Eli Ricks?
You're right.
I'm not trying to disrespect him. I'm just saying, there's nobody in this league that's saying, oh, man, we need to.
Right.
It's just not happening.
Right.
Yeah, we need to stay away from him.
Right.
So you would expect Dallas to kind of be true to form and play a lot of different 11 and 12 for the best matchups.
I mean, I guess the point is I think Dallas will play their offense.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going into this game. Protection would be the number one issue in third down situations, specific situations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, other than that, they're going into this game with the idea that we can't do what we would think we can do.
What do you think Sean Desai's takeaway might have been from last week, Adam, about what I can and can't do as far as rotations?
Well, they seem
sort of hamstrung. I mean, he only has.
That's the point. They've tried Rex in the slot. We know he's really outside man corner, long.
But they don't have anybody else.
They don't. There's nowhere. Greg's right. There's nowhere else to go. So what's he learn? He doesn't have the players. Now, but what he does know is once Roby comes back, a lot of this issue is alleviated. He doesn't have a nickel corner.
Yes.
He doesn't have a natural nickel. Not one. I mean, other Josiah Scott, because he's played it, but they don't want him playing a lot. I'm glad that he's kind of revived his career with the Eagles. But the guy they want is Roby. And we don't know if he's going to be back after the bye. They're on a bye next week.
Don't forget, they signed Roby off the couch.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a nickel corner.
Did a good job against the Rams. But
yeah, I mean,
you're
that's
right.
the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So they're in trouble here, man. You want to get to the Super Bowl with this group? We'll see.
How much of a difference do you think Roby, when healthy, will make, Jay?
Oh, I think he solidifies them, and I think, I stand by what I said. I think that Bradbury and Slade, I think they still have a lot left in the tank, and I think that yes, they're older, but I think Roby, when healthy, because of the communication and because of the familiarity with the position, I think it'll solidify them where you don't have to patch as many holes. Mm-hmm. The Eagles have really, when Roby's playing, you have one patch in the secondary, and that's Bradbury long.
Right.
That's your patch. Is that as a defense coordinator is that if I get Bradbury on a go ball or a post, him one-on-one, I don't want to put him in that situation. But everybody else should be able to hold up for the most part, unless we're playing, exceptional players like Tyreek Hill or like Greg said.
Well, now Kelsey in 2 weeks. We'll see what they do.
That's a different story. Exceptional players. Then you may have variants, but when Roby's healthy, I think there's only one plug. I think that's Bradbury Deep.
All right. Let me ask you then before we take a break here. Which matchup this afternoon, concerns you the most then? CeeDee Lamb outside against maybe a Slayer or Bradbury, or whatever they might do on the inside against the Eagles, whether it's Sidney Brown or Eli Ricks or whatever, maybe their tight end usage or their personnel usage. Which would concern you more?
I don't know which would concern me more. I know Brandon Cooks outside is a problem because he runs so well. You can never take that out.
Yeah.
You can never take that for granted. CeeDee Lamb has killed us in the slot, and I think CeeDee Lamb is just the player type that will hurt us in general because of our lack of production in the slot and because of his nifty and ability to move left and right on a guy like Bradbury and Slay.
What do you guys
Slay
see?
goes for moves as well.
What do you guys see from Lamb, both of you guys, over the years since he was drafted 4 years ago? Is he just a kind of an inside-outside guy? He's got good hand. Like, he sits in zones well? What do you like about him?
Well, he catches the ball really well. He does a great job of crossing people over like basketball. And Greg, you can attest to that on a touchdown last week against the Rams. All he did was go up to the guy, give him a right, left, and it was a terrible decision by Zach. He was in cover 4, but I don't know what I can't get off of it, right? But anyhow, they end up scoring a touchdown because Lamb was able to use basketball movements, and that's something that he does well. He has a basketball player's like movement, and that usually like translates to football.
Right. And that's rare for a guy his size. I usually don't see that kind of fluidity from a tall, lengthy guy like him. Right?
I don't know how tall he is. He
looks like he's
he looks taller, but he's not.
6'1".
I
think he's 6'1". He might be.
Yeah.
He plays the game like a tall, lengthy player.
He does.
Yeah.
I think he might be like about 6'1" and a quarter. He's tall.
Long strider.
Yeah.
I would say his number one trait though is his willingness to want the football. He's he's a competitive dude.
I would bet, Jay, this is just, again, I'm not on the field with him. He's not a burner in terms of 40 time, but I bet because of his length, I bet he moves better than when you're on the field, that he's faster than you think.
You know what? I had this debate with like DBs because you want to know how it presents.
Right.
And talking to Lito, Sheldon, and I'm like, Hank Basket. I was like, he's way faster than me. What's the difference when I'm running? He's like, oh, you look way faster.
No, yeah.
And because Basket was faster than me in a 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
But it's like the way the presentation is, you look faster.
I think
and that right there happens in football because Des Bryant.
Yeah.
Des Bryant didn't run well.
Right.
But his presentation and how aggressive he came off the ball, it looked like he was moving.
Yeah, see, I think Lamb's that kind of guy.
Okay.
I think Lamb probably plays faster. You hear that a lot, but I think it's true with him. Plus, because he's tall, I think he's a strider. So I think he covers a little more ground quicker than you think.
Sure.
Because he runs a lot. You mentioned the routes he runs. He runs a ton of those overs, those crossers, and he gets across the field now.
Yeah.
He's not slow getting across the field.
Yeah.
There's guys that the 40-yard dash will not pick it up.
Yeah.
Because when I say that is that there's guys that are builders. They get better. And then there's guys that are at 40, they're done. But there's guys that meet better at a 60 because they get faster as they go.
Right.
You don't know if he's one of those guys or not.
Right. All right, well, we got a lot more to break down. I want to tell you, it is the fall. And in the fall, all 4 people on this panel, we don't know whether we're coming or we're going. That's how busy we are. In fact, Jason was in Michigan. He probably doesn't even know where he is right now. More on that Michigan later. Ooh. But we're so busy. It's so tough. That's why we love HelloFresh. They deliver farm-fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to our doorstep. There's no more wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. Don't got to research new recipes. We don't have to plan our meals. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done, and the perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. You can't get more efficient than that. Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. It's 25% less expensive than takeout, so you get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. And don't forget about taste and selection. HelloFresh makes food for meat lovers, seafood lovers, vegetarians, vegans, anybody who loves variety and wants a little bit of all of it. All right, my personal favorite is the spicy Creole stew. I've been having it, and I think it's great. Tastes like I just went to someplace in New Orleans and got it right from there. So HelloFresh.com is the place to go. You got to go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the promo code 50Eagles, 50Eagles, for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles. Use the promo code 50Eagles, all one word, for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. All right, well, we talked about the rotating that's going on at the slot position and the difficulty there. They're also rotating at linebacker, which is something we haven't seen the Eagles do as much of in the past as well. Nakobe Dean was out for 4 weeks. Nick Morrow, who was released before the start of the season, then the practice squad, then back on the 53, played well enough to stay on the 53, and now you've seen Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, and Nick Morrow all sort of rotating in and out there as Sean Desai talks about being optional and keeping guys fresh. I'm going to ask you, start off with you on this, Greg. In general, how do you feel Nakobe Dean has played in all elements of the game for the Eagles so since he's come back?
I mean, to be honest with you,
and don't worry, we're shielded.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like he stands out. I mean, I'm not charting every play, so I can't sit here and say how they grade him on every play, but I don't feel like he stands out. And I got to tell you, that doesn't surprise me because I thought at Georgia he played a certain kind of way, and he was a really good downhill player for his size at Georgia. He blitzed a lot at Georgia, was really good at that. In the NFL with the Eagles, he's not playing that way. Right. And, I don't think he necessarily stands out on tape. And let's put it this way. I'm not surprised that they're rotating their linebackers because I think you could easily make the case that over the last 3-4 weeks that Morrow has played better than Dean overall. He shows up more to me on film. And Cunningham's a really good run defender. I don't think he's a great pass defender, but he's a really good run defender.
So to that point, though, I did have a personnel source who watched tape say to me, and I think this is based on expectation, that he thought Cunningham is actually covered better this year than in the past. Still not great, and not what you want him to do.
And that might well be true.
But he said, when I watch these three linebackers play, he made the point on Morrow playing well. He says, I think Zach Cunningham is doing what's asked of him and a little bit more.
And I would agree with that.
Yeah. So that kind of puts
I would argue that Cunningham's been their best linebacker.
Well, it puts you in a weird situation because you have assets tied up into Nakobe Dean, and that's the reason he's playing.
Was he a third round? When was he drafted?
Third.
He was a third round pick.
So it's not that high.
But it isn't. But the Eagles historically will give you every opportunity to succeed and or fail.
But I think
how long do we keep Sidney Brown?
I think the fan base, because he's from Georgia, and there was this belief that he was going to be a first-round pick, right or wrong, okay?
Yeah.
There's this sense that Nakobe Dean is this special guy.
Yes, that is true.
And,
overhyped.
If you guys remember many years ago, Manti Te'o at Notre Dame was someone who draft analysts thought was first-round material.
Right.
Forget about the catfish. Just talking about football.
Right.
He was this great linebacker, and he's going to be amazing. He went in the third round, and that didn't surprise NFL people. And he ended up being a third-round player. Though. Right. If that. But that wasn't a surprise to NFL people as much as it was to fans and maybe the draft analyst guys who are in the media.
Yeah, I think that Morrow has played well enough to earn his spot on the team. He's turned the football over. He has gotten sacks. He had an opportunity against the Rams to have 2 turnovers and didn't get either one of them. So I believe that he's played well. And here's the thing where he does stand out, when Nakobe Dean does stand out, is when it comes to route recognition. And you saw it clear as day.
Say it again.
Route recognition.
Route recognition.
Okay. Route recognition, understanding flow, and understanding where you should be. There's multiple times in this Commanders game where the linebacker should have been in a better position because of what's underneath, and you understanding that. Our guys just don't have a great ability of that right now because we're playing so many young guys inside.
Right.
It's like it's just a natural feel. You understand what's coming behind you based on what's in front of you, and that comes with an experience.
So this is why I bring up these points, Adam, right? But I'm not trying to throw Nakobe Dean under the bus. I think Greg said it the best. In college, he's stopping the run and blitzing a lot.
He blitzed a lot in college.
A
He was
lot.
great at it.
So
Yeah.
asking him to have route recognition, take great depth in his drops, and man cover are not things that he did at Georgia. And again, he missed 4 games.
Not only that, let's not forget he played 3 dozen snaps on defense last year.
Yeah.
Okay. He also missed 4 games this season.
Right.
It's
And a lot of training camp.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's
yeah.
right. He missed training
He's
camp
missed
too.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's part when you talk to position coaches, they always mention, well, how much has he been on the field? Because when I ask what's wrong with this guy, the first thing they'll say is if he's been hurt. Well, he's been on the field a lot. You got to get used to being with your teammates. There's timing.
It's reps. You got to play.
Exactly. Now, the opponent knows this. So with their linebackers not being good in coverage, you know they're going to go after it. I'm interested to see today what Mike McCarthy, Broughton Schottenheimer bring together here today to exploit these linebackers in coverage. We talked about this to start the season. At some point, it's going to be a factor.
Right.
Particularly at tight ends. They've got Jake Ferguson. We could talk about him.
Sure.
He's a second-year tight end. But at some point, the tight ends are going to start hitting this team a little bit.
Yeah. Doesn't
You know,
this
it's going to
game-
be.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's going to be interesting too if they feel how they feel they can protect, because the Cowboys have done a good job out of empty formations this year,
Yeah.
and they even line up in empty formations out of 12 personnel. So again, that could be a function of how they feel they can protect.
Yeah.
But you know,
Still gives up a ton of pressure.
yeah,
Yeah, the right tackle.
yeah,
Terrence Steele.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's
So we'll see. I mean, you don't know the
Yeah,
you don't know the answer to that.
I feel like the recipe here calls for Dallas to want to come out throwing because they're not even running the ball all that well. Tony Pollard only averaging 3.8, I believe, per
And
carry
he's not
as the main guy.
he's not a feature back in a strict sense. You're not building your offense around Pollard, but he is a very good receiver.
Yes.
So the word I got just real quick is that their run scheme has changed a little bit. I don't know the particulars. I just had someone tell me who's watched tape with them the last 2 years. So, Pollard, see, this is the thing, Jeff. They didn't sign a veteran to back him up.
Right.
Rico Dowdle was an okay player and a lot of injuries in college.
I thought
that was a
Bruce Vaughn,
mistake.
the kid that they drafted, might
It's too
come
small.
up, but he's small.
It's too small. His dad's on their scouting staff. But go ahead.
I wanted to see if Greg saw this play this past game versus the Commanders. The Sidney Brown didn't carry in the cover 3. He was supposed to carry. Ended up giving up a touchdown to Johan Dotson. Did you see Bayer and how he went with the tight end when Slay was free? Like those little
Trying to
things.
remember the,
It was a
play.
seam. It was a seam route.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a seam
touchdown
route.
to Dotson?
It was a touchdown to Dotson.
I'm sure I marked the play.
So you're saying and he didn't carry it
So
to the next spot?
here's the thing, right? So the version of cover 3 they're in, because they're in a red zone, the nickelback has to go with any seam. Any seam or out, he has to carry it. He has to play man-to-man, outside leverage.
Right.
Bayer was on the post, and because Slay's man went to a shallow cross, Slay is free now. So because that middle seam player, Slay can take him over because he's coming right towards Slay, and now Bayer can help the younger guy out, right? Those are like little things that maybe as we're going on in the season could happen and they can gel. That's why I'm not saying all is lost for the secondary, all is lost for the linebackers. We talk about inexperience with Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham, Morrow, these guys, inexperience. But as the season goes on, they're going to get better at it because all of these things that they're making are correctable, except for some speed and player things when it comes to the nickel and it comes to Bradbury Long. But Bradbury is a good player. It's just that he has to be disciplined and efficient at all times. That's what happens when you're not like the most talented player. You have to be assignment pure and efficient with your movement.
All right, I want to bring this up. Go ahead.
Quick,
Jump
just
in
to
and then
respond
we
to
got
that
some
play.
Yep.
I thought that they got caught in a tough spot. By the way, Jeff, that was a great example. That was 2nd and 16, the Dotson 21-yard touchdown.
Right.
They were in 11 personnel on 2nd and 16. The Eagles were playing big nickel on 2nd and 16 versus 11 personnel, and they rushed 5, so they were playing 3 under, 3 deep. And the Commanders went 4 strong. When you're playing 3 under, 3 deep, you're losing an underneath defender. So now it changes responsibilities, and they had 4 strong, 4 to one side.
Right.
It's really tough to defend 4 to one side when you're losing an underneath defender in zone.
Sure.
And Dotson was number 3 to trips.
Right.
So last year, Jeff and I talked to multiple teams that told us if they could protect, they're going after Bradbury. when they grade the Eagles tape, the opponent, they did not think Bradbury moved very well. Here we are a year later, he's moving worse.
He's not going to be moving better.
Right, exactly. So this is coming. Like the Bradbury target on his back is coming. You always hear coaches say that. See number 20, is he 24?
Yeah.
See number 24, we're going after him. That's coming today.
Yeah, I think Dallas comes out throwing it. I wonder if they go a little no huddle, try to get some up tempo and just.
They got to protect because I think their first 2 or 3 dropbacks last week.
They got your Hoyt got him, Young got him, and then Donald got him.
And left tackle, Josh Sweat's side, he's the right defensive end versus if Tyron Smith is not playing or not moving well, or if Adoga's out there, good luck, Dallas.
Well, Adoga gave up one of those sacks early last week.
Sure.
I've seen Smith get beat too. I don't know if he's the same player. I've seen
Tyron Smith? I would agree.
I've even seen Zach Martin get thrown around a little bit this year for the first
We got
time.
thrown around by Aaron Donald.
Aaron Donald? I thought there was somebody else
That doesn't count.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple more scores in. Michael H. says the Eagles are going to win 34 over the Turds, 34-21. I assume he means the Cowboys there.
Well,
Emily Bentley says Cowgirls 10, Eagles 45.
Whoa.
Wow, almost 2008 reminiscent.
I was just going to say, what was that score?
44-6.
There you go.
And Gary Kinkley says Birds 31, Cow. I cannot use
Cowpokes?
I can't say this even though I probably could. It's just the internet. But we'll just say Dallas 27 on that one. So a lot of Eagle optimism there. Let's finish off the discussion about the Eagles defense, talking about how they'll match up against the Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott, because for all the criticism and ridicule that Dak Prescott gets here in Philadelphia, he's 8-3 against the Eagles, 19 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, and 98.9 passer rating. The only team that he's beaten more in his career is the Giants, which is probably the case for most NFC teams in the last 5 or 6 years. He has an 80% win clip in general against the NFC East. That's pretty impressive. He's 11-2 against the Giants, 8-3 against the Eagles, 9-2 versus the Commanders. When he's done with his career, he's going to be like, thank God I was in the NFC East, because a quarterback to have an 80% win clip is pretty good. Greg, you mentioned that the last 2 games especially, you've seen him really kind of come into his own.
I think he's played well the last 2 games. I think he's moved well. He's made plays outside of structure, which he really hadn't done much through the first part of this year or even last year, but he's made some plays outside of structure. I think he's really been decisive with his reads and his throws. I mean, the first touchdown he threw last week to Ferguson was a big-time throw. And I think he's just been really, really decisive. He's had a tendency at times throughout his career to get a little bit stuck in the pocket, and then he throws it late, and that's when he gets into trouble. But in the last couple of weeks, he's seen it clearly, and he's turned it loose within the timing and structure of the play design, and he's looked good.
Jay, is Dak Prescott a quarterback that you say the Eagles really got to be on their P's and Q's to beat?
Yeah, I think Dak is better when a run game, and I think all those stats, I bet you if you go back to the 8-3 record, I bet you Zeke is going over 100 yards in most of those games.
Oh, he has.
Right?
He kills these.
So I think it's skewed by that, because when you have a run game, you have to put more people down in order to support the run, which gives you more likely and optimal cleaner looks for the quarterback, right? So if we can limit the run game, I think it throws Dak off. But yes, is he playing better the last few games? He is, and like Greg said, he's more decisive. However, I feel like Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend.
You're not going to put
We don't have a Michigan hat.
Right? So here's the thing. There's times where Dak, these last few games, Chargers and Rams, where he's thrown into the wrong coverage and the ball was completed. And that right there lets me know that he doesn't always see it well, and you can get him. So I believe that there's still, money to be made on Dak Prescott.
Okay.
You
did point out that Jalen Hurts did the same thing last week, throwing a fade to a 2-man, right? It's just that he has A.J. Brown.
It was back show. It was in the right spot, though.
Okay.
If you're going to do it, it was in the right spot. Right? So Dak Prescott threw a post route in the middle of cover 4, but the safety was a bonehead. He was looking up a shallow cross rather than doubling the single man backside.
Well, maybe he noticed that.
Well, maybe he did.
Maybe you noticed that.
Maybe he noticed it.
So
Me, I wouldn't have been over there.
Right.
Yeah, I would have
Maybe you noticed that.
What was the play that DiFilippo was telling us on our interview with him yesterday? That he goes, you really would tell him when he came off the field, yes, it was a touchdown, but the play was not there. What was the play?
That was the throw
was
to
the
the
throw.
22 man,
Yeah.
to the fade to A.J. Brown.
John
against the
said that's
22
not the throw, but you would say great throw, but you sit him down and go, here's where the throw was, just so you know.
You're talking about the touchdown?
Yes.
I don't. Was it a touchdown?
No, it was a touchdown. Left side.
Yeah, 'cause he caught it and
it
then
was,
beat,
it was 22 man. He threw it back shoulder
Right.
to A.J. Brown. Like
Right. It wasn't in the end zone. He turned it into a touchdown.
He turned
right?
to a touchdown.
Right.
I just thought it was interesting, because we want to ask John what are those discussions like. He goes, you always have to point out where the throw should have been, but also compliment him on the great throw.
Yeah, but
The
that's how you
confidence
do it.
that he has to make
That's
it.
That, that's that. No. Yeah.
Oh, great throw.
We're
Great throw.
going to
You
talk
understand
about
what-
that. We're going to get to Jalen Hurts in just a second. Also, it was a fascinating week in the NFL between some things with quarterbacks and the thing with a franchise and new regime. We're going to get to that too. Adam Caplan has intel. We're going to pause for a moment right now to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your...
All right, welcome back to Hour 2 of Inside the Birds pregame live here at Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Ave on the Delaware waterfront. It is a beautiful day. It's a great day for Eagles Cowboys. It's a great day to be at Fringe Bar here. The smell is driving me nuts. I gotta say, it's gonna be a hard hour here when I can smell the jerk wings being cooked in the background, and I'm waiting to just get out of here and get some. We got fans at the bar. We got people wearing Eagles jerseys, the 250-seat stadium with the 50-foot theater next to us to come.
Really cool.
People come watch the game. What an incredible place to watch an Eagles game and enjoy and have great food and drinks. The Eagles today are 3-point favorites, last I checked, according to our friends at MyBookie, and a total of 47, which I thought was a little low, a little number, over under of 47. But let's, as we look ahead slightly, Eagles have a tough stretch coming up here against the Cowboys. They've got that bye next week. It's always tough to beat the bye. No, they got the bye, and then after that, we know that it's going to be Kansas City and Buffalo and San Francisco and Dallas again. It's a pretty tough.
And Seattle's pretty good. They got to go on the
Seattle will
road
be
there.
good. Yeah, of course, the Bills and Niners game will be at home. Adam, all those teams that we talked about, Bills, Niners, and the Chiefs, made trades before the NFL trade deadline. Wondering which team you thought helped itself out the most.
Well, it's funny, depending on who you speak with, the Niners, because the Niners were looking for a DN. It wasn't just Chase Young who they had acquired. They called the Panthers, I'm told. Anyone who had a DN or a edge rusher potentially available. Panthers weren't trading Brian Burns. It was a non-starter. But they called everyone. They settled what's going to be a late third-round pick. It's a special compensatory pick for losing 2 minority people who work for them. So it's a late third-round pick. And they need a pass rusher. They no longer wanted Cleveland Farrell to start. I mean, it's been a nice story, Cleveland, of reviving your career after being overdrafted with the Raiders, but you're not starting anymore.
Right.
That's what they wanted to do, and they need to do that now. I'm also told they looked in the corner, potential upgrade over Lenore, but they wanted depth because they don't have any really good depth at outside
there's
corner.
another team with an issue at slot corner.
Okay, it's slot corner too. Okay. But they were looking for depth. So the bottom line is they tried. I would put them at number 1. And look, you could say what you want about Rasul Douglas. Everybody does. He makes big plays. He gives up big plays. But going from a zone defense to another zone defense, that's what they did. And Buffalo needed to do that.
Yeah, no, listen, I think the Eagles are still deeper altogether on the D-line, but you usually only rush 4 when you're out there, unless you're blitzing. But when you put Javon Hargrave, Chase Young, Nick Bosa,
Armstead.
and Arik Armstead on the field together, that's pretty tough. That's
a good front,
right there.
yeah.
That'll be a heck of a game. One D-line versus the other D-line. That's
about who protects the football at that
pretty
point.
good. What's that?
It's about who protects the football that game.
There you go. Jason, I want to ask you about Kansas City, one of your old teams and one of your old coaches with Andy Reid. They made that trade to get Mecole Hardman. All year long, they've sort of looked for that number 1 wide receiver complement to Travis Kelce, and it seems like it's a different guy every week. It could be Rashee Rice, could be Mecole Hardman, could be Sky Moore if he's not dropping passes. Is this a very different Kansas City offense to you? Because really the only guy they lost, I think, was Juju Smith-Schuster from last year, and it's not like he was a 1,000-yard receiver for him.
But he was solid, so you need consistency when you have a guy that is. And you need a guy that can win one-on-ones. And they've been spoiled with Tyreek Hill for so many years, and they were able to win the Super Bowl without him.
Right.
And guys play well in big moments, but we still haven't seen Valdez-Scantling do, what he was brought there to do.
Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney. These guys, they're guys that the quarterback is kind of, pushing along rather than having, a star receiver. And I think that they'll address that this offseason. They don't have the resources, but I think you can package enough of these guys together to get someone good.
I suspect, Greg, and I don't know how you watch a lot more Kansas City than I have, that at some point Rashee Rice will probably start to emerge maybe as their top receiver complement. There have been some good games. He's had a touchdown today.
Right.
It's just a very weird grab bag of receivers that they're trying to make.
Super spreader offense.
Well, and they've addressed the position. See, that's the thing. It's not as if they have not addressed the position, because they drafted Sky Moore a year ago. Rice was a second-round pick this year.
Tony came in, high pick, even though he's a free agent.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's not as if they haven't addressed the position.
I know.
It's, now guys, look, Rice is a rookie. So, as you said, Jeff, he could continue to improve as the year goes on.
Yeah.
I kind of liked his college tape. He had some drops, which were troublesome, but I think he's got traits to be, I always hate saying a number one because, I'm not sure what that means unless
Plus,
the guy.
Travis Kelce is
right,
really
and
big
unless the
number
guy has ridiculously high-level traits like Jamar Chase.
Right.
Rice does not have.
Yeah.
Right, Rice does not have those traits.
Correct.
But I think that he's big, he's physical, he can run a little bit. I think if he were to continue to develop, he could become a really nice player in their offense.
Right.
Yeah.
Drop
they could have
pass.
used that. They could use like a veteran player.
Yeah.
Like this, just an established
Yeah,
veteran.
yeah.
That's what
wins
Juju was
one-on-one.
last year for them.
Yeah. A guy like Brandon Cooks would have been great for them.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. We're going to move on. Of course, Inside the Birds is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let me ask you guys a question. You ever been so swamped at work or whatever you're doing that you take a small break to recover, but yet you're still thinking about the work and you're consumed by it, so it doesn't feel like a break at all? Well, that happens to me every football season, happens to a lot of people. And I know that you sometimes just have to step away from the All-22 film or the microphone or whatever, but you don't always get the peace of mind when you do. Well, therapy can help that. And whatever's going on, therapy can help you find a way to go forward. It can help you with positive coping strategies and learning how to set boundaries for yourself and empowering yourself to be the best version of you. You don't have to have major trauma in your life to benefit from therapy. So if you're thinking about therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire online to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists for no additional charge at any time. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/thebirds today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/thebirds. All right, so we were talking about Jalen Hurts going into the break. We're going to talk about him a little bit more. Nick Sirianni was asked during the week a really funny question. I thought the answer was kind of funny. He was asked if he's noticed that Jalen Hurts seems to play really well when he's nursing an injury. It goes back to the ankle 2 years ago, and then even last year with the collarbone and the shoulder, he wound up having an amazing Super Bowl for somebody who lost. And Nick Sirianni's response was, well, I didn't notice it, but we'll look into that and see if there's any correlation. To which my response was, well, what happens if you find there's a correlation? You go take a baseball bat to the old knees, then next time he's healthy? I don't know what correlation.
Yeah, why would he care about that? I mean, I understand the question because we wondered, a lot of people did, how would he play that if he's restricted, which he clearly is. What did he run 4 times last week?
Yeah, very few.
You could see that he had a knee issue last week.
Right. You could see a little hobble, but if you look at the stats, obviously from a career standpoint, 29 completions was his second most, seventh most attempts, tied for 8th passing yards at 319, tied for first passing touchdowns with 4. He had a 135.7 passer rating, which was the second best of his career, and he completed 76% of his passes. So if you didn't know or you couldn't see that, if you were box score scouting, you would say, hey, he had a pretty good game, and he did. He had a very good game.
Well, here's the thing we talk about on this show. He got the ball out of his hand. He checked it down. He took the first available for most of the game. And it would have been 1 sack if he didn't get run down by Tuhill. And I don't think that'll happen if he's healthy. Right? So I believe that he did a masterful job of just getting the ball out of his hand, throwing it to check downs, throwing it to the first available most of the game. And then you have opportunities as the game goes along to get the ball down the field, but you're already in a rhythm at that point. And I believe he did a good job in that. And I think him being hurt was like a blessing in disguise because he couldn't rely on it. He couldn't sit there and wait until the end of the play in order to try to be a superhero. He had to get the ball out of his hand. And I think that's the best version of Jalen Hurts. I won't say the best version, but when it comes to throwing and making decisions, that's the best version of Jalen Hurts.
The fact that he's passing the ball and doing what you just said and not looking to run, how does that factor in, Greg, in what you think the Cowboys will do from an attack standpoint or a defensive approach? Because we know that.
Well, I don't think they're going to. I don't think in their game planning all week they're saying he's not going to run, so let's forget about it.
Well, that's what I was asking.
That's not going to happen.
Okay.
That's not going to happen.
They're still going to have maybe a spy defender or.
I mean, I don't know if they'll have a spy,
Well, no,
but they're not going to take the approach that he's not going to run.
Oh yeah, they have to. In fact, they'll do it like he's going to run. And if he doesn't, great.
Of course.
They got a lot of people in their middle of their defense that can run.
Yeah, I mean, they're.
I seen that Marquise Bell kid run with
Tutu Atwell. He's fast. He was a safety in college.
Oh my God!
So he's playing linebacker now, correct?
Yeah.
He was a safety.
Bell,
in college.
Marquise Bell.
I would say that. First of all, just a quick comment about Hurts. I thought he played really well last week, which is what we're all saying. I thought the Eagles came out last week and pretty much said we can throw on this defense. And we're going to throw because they didn't really run the ball until the second half.
Right. Seems like both teams came out and felt that way. By the way.
It was a throw ball game, as we call it.
Yeah, they put the ball in Jalen's hands last week to throw it. And it was an 11 personnel game. They had 3 wide receivers on the field. His numbers out of 11 personnel were phenomenal. Every one of his throws out of 11 personnel came against a sub defense for the Commanders, so they knew what they were going to get from a personnel standpoint. But now you're facing a different animal with the Cowboys D. The Cowboys defense looks really fast on tape, really fast.
Right.
And they've got a lot of depth on the D line. They move people around. They've got a lot of players who can line up in a lot of different positions. They'll line up 5 across, what a lot of people call diamond fronts. They'll move Parsons around for what they view as a good matchup, because normally when you line up 5 across, you tend to get one-on-one matchups in pass protection. But not only can Parsons move around, Lawrence can move around, Armstrong can move around. I mean, they stunt as much or more than any defense in the NFL. So they put that burden on your offensive line as well. That's a mental burden as well as a physical burden. So I mean, this is a difficult front to play against.
And to go along with that, not just the front, in their back end, they're very talented in the back end. They have 3 safeties that can be interchangeable, right? And then you bring in, Lewis, and you have these guys that they're able to play defenses that most people cannot play. I seen I didn't understand the defense. I understood what it was, but I didn't understand what to call it. It was like they were playing, I call it a 4 match. They were playing 4 with the corners and the 2 safeties, but the 2 nickel defenders or the 2 inside players, they were playing man to man.
Right.
And they were able to get away with it multiple times.
Right.
And that's veteran players, but that's also talented players. They have a bunch of talented players in the back end.
Sure. Yeah. So by the way, the Eagles, the game that they won last year with Jalen Hurts playing, they were actually outgained by Dallas, and Dallas had a way higher yards per play average. If you remember, Cooper Rush threw 2 interceptions that hurt them, and there was a failed 4th and 1 conversion. Jalen didn't light it up, but Dallas did not play very well. One thing that the Eagles were doing earlier, and I have to wonder about now, especially against this Dallas front, is the Eagles were running at will against some teams earlier this year. Last week, as Greg mentioned, it really wasn't, they weren't asking to run the ball because they felt they could throw the ball on Washington. But if you go back the last 3 weeks now, and again, this is with Jalen not running as much against the Commanders, the Dolphins, and the Jets, they are in the bottom third of the NFL in both rushing total and also in rushing average. They are 31st with, I was under 3.5. So is Jalen Hurts not running the ball or not doing zone reads and keepers impacting this team's ability to run the ball? Are you seeing that effectively?
I think the answer to that would be yes, because he's a huge. Look, I remember last year, because we did the Eagles in the matchup show a lot, and we kept trying to look for different things to show, because you don't want to show the same thing every week. You could see how defenses had to play a certain way in the way they lined up because of the Jalen Hurts factor as a runner. It dictates how defenses line up, okay? You saw that. There was no better example than against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game when they had that drive where I think Gainwell ran for 17 yards and then Swift ended the drive with a 13-yard touchdown.
Right.
They ended up with 3-on-3 to the boundary side of the formation because of the way the defense, you remember these plays?
Yes.
Because of the way the defense has to line up because of the Hurts factor. So, it changes. It can change. I don't want to say it automatically does, but it certainly can change the way then defenses choose to align their fronts and their back end as well.
Right.
I think for the most of this year, I think the prevailing thought for defensive coordinators / head coaches is that the Eagles don't have the patience to stay at the run game. I think that's the prevailing thought. And I think from the Patriots to the Jets to the Vikings to multiple teams that they play, I just don't think that the Eagles have the patience to do it. Even though they can do it at a high level, they haven't shown that they'll consistently do it game after game. I don't necessarily know, and we talk about this, if it's a organization thing or is it a head coaching thing, is it an offensive coordinator thing? Well, they did against the Vikings.
Right.
But when
and
they
a few
get to
teams.
success, Jason, if they have immediate success, we've seen this for 2 years now.
Yeah.
Remember the Green Bay game? That game that Jeff brought up, the Dallas game last season. They will if they get off to a good start. If they don't, it's over.
And that right there, that impatience hurts you in the long run, right? And when it comes to games like this, because I believe that the clear weakness of the Dallas Cowboys is their run defense. That's the clear weakness of their team. And the teams that have gotten after them in the run game have won games by a lot. And I think that the Eagles can do it, but will they have the patience to consistently get after it that way?
Do the Eagles have to run the ball well today to win?
I believe so because of what they're playing in the back end. I don't think that these are pushovers in the secondary.
Right.
Deron Bland has 3 pick sixes this year. A lot of them were thrown right to him, but he made the play.
Last week was,
Yeah. That he made the play.
Yeah.
So, and then, we know what Gilmore has been. And Jordan Lewis is a pretty good nickel that's always in position. He can get, I always say, out-athleted to the ball because he's such a smaller guy.
Right.
But other than that, they're going to be there near you.
And Hooker has a lot of range as a post safety.
One of the more rangier players he's dealt with injuries. He's a first round player that's a ball guy.
It's very. I mean, we're sitting here just 3 or 4 weeks removed from when the Eagles had the #1 rushing offense.
Here's what we don't know.
They're down to 4.12 per carry. That's 18th in the league.
Here's what we don't know, unless Adam, based on you guys talking to people. I certainly don't know the answer. Does that come from Brian Johnson or Sirianni when the game is happening? Because don't forget, Sirianni's an offensive guy.
Sure.
So, does he? We don't know the answer.
There's no way to know in game. Like, is he tapping on the shoulder?
It's a direct correlation from Cam Jurgens being out.
I was going to ask you guys that.
And by the way, I'm glad you said that.
What have you seen from Suopeta?
I think that's what we're going to see too. Is you're going to see Parsons. They're going to line up in that 5 across, and Parsons is going to be on Tyler Steen.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're going to see how that goes.
Yeah, they did it a few times against the Rams where they were in that 5 across and they had those wide splits and he ended up getting either on the guard or the center.
But they isolate him.
Yeah.
What that does is it isolates Parsons on whoever they want to isolate Parsons on.
Jeff, what did you hear on Suopeta? I know you said you heard something.
Yeah, we were talking. Just the source told me that he just hadn't been playing well. If you look, we've even been talking on this show and other shows on Inside the Birds that there have been times where going back to the Jets game where the Eagles' offensive line has been getting handled at times, and specifically with stunts too. They've had some difficulties there on the right side handling them. So clearly they drafted Tyler Steen in the 3rd round and wanted to have him available. And then my only question is, this is an interesting game to want to put a rookie who's never played guard.
I know.
And then take Sua Opeta out.
It surprises me if they do this.
Lawrence Armstrong is like.
I mean, even Lawrence comes inside too.
Yeah, Lawrence. Yeah.
And Lawrence is a good player.
Yeah, that's why. And
by the way, Odighi Zua is a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are good
Yeah.
players.
This is why I asked the question. Do they? And I'm not an offensive coordinator, but do they need to start figuring out? I am not. In my own mind, I am.
Wow.
But do they need to start maybe going back to some of the basics in the run game, whether it's tackle traps, guard trap, power, just because they're not running the quarterback anymore? Do they, Jason, need to spice up the run game again and get that going?
I just think that they need to commit to it and realize that the run game is it's an investment. You don't get paid now. You get paid in the 4th quarter. You get paid late in the 3rd quarter, right? So I just think that is,
which they were doing early in the season, by the way.
Yeah, right. So that's what the run game is. The run game doesn't always have immediate success, right? So getting back to basics is one thing, but remember, we're halfway done through the season, so to speak, and it's still time to experiment. And this is what this team is doing. Mm-hmm. We have the luxury of not playing the best football, being in the bottom 5 teams in the league in turnover margin, and still be the number 1 team in the National Football League. So we're experimenting with a bunch of different personnels, new people in different spots, but we're still learning from wins. That's a positive. So I think that it's not all doom and gloom. I think more so that they have to have just Tyler Steen to see what they have with that 3rd round pick if Opeta's not playing well.
Right. All right. So you mentioned Micah Parsons, where he lines up, what he can do. He played just 1 game against the Eagles last year. That was the one the Eagles won. They did a very good job of neutralizing him. Jay likes that Mariah Carey, right?
Yeah, Mariah Carey came on. I got distracted.
They did a good job of neutralizing him. If you guys remember, they sort of made him the conflict player, right? Where he was coming in, going out, coming in. They would go to his side. Sometimes the quarterback would keep the ball. He would crash at the mesh point. So if the quarterback's not running like that, can they continue to make him a conflict player? You're shaking your head no.
No, that's out of the game plan. Okay. That whole concept is out of the game plan.
Matter of fact, says that.
So he's going to cause a conflict on his own then.
Yeah. If you can't outrun Casey Toohill, you're not outrunning
former Eagle great. No.
Right. So and he's laboring moving right now. Jalen is. So that whole putting Micah Parsons in conflict and making him think, I wouldn't do that this game if I'm trying to protect Jalen Hurts. I'm scrapping that. I'm punting it as far as I can.
Greg, where have you seen Parsons do his most damage this year? I know they move him around a lot.
Oh, they move him around a lot. I mean, I've seen him do damage in pass rush versus offensive centers. He's so quick. I mean, it looks like the Iverson crossover when he beats offensive centers. But I've seen him. He's lined up at 1 technique. He's lined up at 3 technique. He lines up outside. He stands up. That's kind of what we call a joker, where he just kind of stands up in the middle of the defense and moves around, and you're not exactly sure what gap he's going to attack as a pass rusher. I mean, don't forget, the Cowboys are aware of what you just said too. He's not going to line up in one spot.
Right.
So now you get, you got to be aware of that. But he's the most explosive player, but he's not the only player who can hurt you.
Right.
And that's the thing about the Cowboys front. And they've got really good speed at linebacker. You mentioned Bell. He can run.
Oh, yeah.
Damone Clark can run too. I mean, he came out of LSU a few years ago, and as Adam remembers, at the Combine they found a neck issue, so he had to sit out a year. But when you watched him in college at LSU, he can run all over the field. I mean, he's one of those guys.
What happened to their defense against San Francisco? We know Dak didn't play well, but what happened, guys, against the Niners? What happened to Dallas's offense, or actually defense, but basically, what happened in that game? They got smoked.
They got beat up front.
Yeah.
That was the bottom line. They got handled up front, and it was to the point where they were going backwards, by the second step. They were going backwards, and that's the thing. That's what the 49ers has the ability to do, is to wear you down in the run game. And I believe once you see that on tape, I don't know how and what the Cardinals did to them. The Cardinals took them to the woodshed at just the big boy school. Like, oh, you guys are fast, and you know you're fast. You can move around everywhere else, but we're going to run it at you. We're going to negate that by being powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think the Eagles should do that rather than play into their hands, which is a speed game. Because this is a fast football team. Right. The Cowboys are a fast football team defensive.
Yeah,
and their defense looks fast on. You know, sometimes you know this. You just watch tape sometimes, and you go, they look fast. Excuse me, and they look fast on tape.
And they're super deep on the back end, Jeff. Way deeper than the Eagles.
Yeah.
So it's, as we've all said, the Eagles' offensive approach versus the Dallas defense is fascinating. To me, that's really where it's going to be handled here. Because if you could protect against Dallas, now the other thing is they're not like all pros. It's not like you can't throw against Dallas. The Niners, Kittle had 3 touchdowns against them. Mm-hmm. So you can do that. And we know that Goddard's had some good games in the past against the Cowboys.
Right. Well, the Eagles do have one advantage on offense that we're going to talk about in a second. First, we want to take a break and hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles, Mr. Merrill Reese.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you're stopping to Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. Speaking of a great deal, in order to have a show this good, in a place as awesome as Fringe Bar, you've got to have a great production team, guys who get up at the crack of dawn, do all the setup, do all the lighting, tell us what to do. They almost tell us what to say. I didn't write any of this script. Really, it's all them. James and Zach, they're behind the wheels again, bringing Inside the Birds pregame live to you in high definition with new graphics, videos, and more. And we just want to thank them for all the hard work that they put in to make Inside the Birds pregame live a great show, the best pregame show that you can watch in the Delaware Valley, and even better when it's here at Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Ave. It is a beautiful day. Hey, you see outside?
It's really nice. It's really nice.
It don't feel like Eagles Cowboys weather yet. I was, expecting like gray clouds and people with scowls on their face. You got people running like happy.
That would be at the Vet when Eagles would play at the Vet. Some of those games were nasty.
Oh, they
played
were.
late afternoon, 2008.
You're so lucky, Jason. You never had to deal with a game at the Vet.
That's right.
Your knees, thank you, and the Eagles for not having to play at the Vet.
With the wood on under the turf.
Yeah, I've had the Metrodome. It's about the same.
Oh man, but only once in a while. Right? College and not too. What was the worst playing surface during your playing days?
The Metrodome.
Metrodome? No. When you first got the Eagles,
it was the Metrodome. Yeah, no, they had big cracks in it. You could see the concrete. It was bad.
Boy.
Really?
And you couldn't wear cleats. You had to wear AstroTurf shoes.
Turf shoes, really?
Yeah, like they had the spikes.
Really old school. Holy smokes!
Yeah, the Sharks.
Gotta watch out for that turf monster, right?
Well, yeah. You wear you wear cleats on that. You wouldn't have an ACL the next day for sure.
All right, well, we were talking about this Dallas defensive front, how fast they are. They can be physical. The Eagles have a guy who's pretty fast, pretty physical, and doing an amazing job over the last 6 weeks in A.J. Brown, who has set an NFL record. He stands alone as the only player in NFL history with 6 straight games of 125 receiving yards or more. That could be 7 tonight if once again he just outmuscles and outflanks and out-everything's the opponent, which will be, for him on many occasions, a pretty savvy, smart, and physical cornerback of his own right, and that's Stephon Gilmore, who I thought was one of the most, maybe not the splashiest free agent signing, but for what a team needed and what a team got, especially when Trayvon Diggs was healthy, I thought Gilmore was a really important signing for the Cowboys. How's he playing, Greg?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
And they're a high percentage man-to-man defense. So I would doubt they're going to change their stripes. Now,
Really?
that doesn't mean they're going to play it on every snap, but I don't think they're going to come into this game with the idea that we have to change what we do in order to play.
Interesting.
So they're a high percentage man defense. Now it's situational.
Yeah.
They play over the last 2 years. They play more cover 2 under Dan Quinn than we've seen before, but that's very situational.
Sure.
But they They may have, I believe they have the highest percentage of cover one in the NFL.
They're at 40% total man,
Yeah.
which is a lot in today's NFL.
Yeah.
I always say in today's NFL. So here's a question: do you notice? Will Gilmore travel a lot? Like, will he go against the number one guy?
Not necessarily.
Oh,
no.
okay.
No.
Okay.
They trust the guys that
Yeah.
they trust them out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This is what the Eagles are hearing by the coach staff. Got to be man.
Yeah.
The whole game plan. Hey, you get one-on-one matchups. You got to be man.
Got to be man. Yeah.
That's what you're hearing the entire week.
Right. So, I mean, I know we say this every week, right? We say Devontae Smith could be that, and it's been A.J. Brown no matter who he's gone up against. But if you're going to choose between A.J. Brown versus Gilmore or Devontae Smith versus Deron Bland, who last year I believe was a nickel and has played
Ended up playing outside last year.
Yeah.
Because they
Lewis
couldn't
was hurt.
find someone else to play opposite Diggs last year.
Right.
And now he's playing outside because Diggs got hurt.
Sure. By the way, I like Deron Bland. I think he's
He's a solid player. I don't think, Jay, you could respond to this. I don't think the Eagles are going to go into this game with the idea that, Gilmore's out there, we can't throw it to A.J. Brown.
Sure.
I mean, that's
No.
not going to happen.
No, it's not happening. And it's the nature of how A.J. Brown is getting open. There's times where he's just being more physically strong than people.
Right.
He's not doing anything dynamic at the line of scrimmage. Jalen Hurts is
gonna
just
ask you
giving him a shot.
Is
Right.
it just the late hands, Jason, or what is it about him?
It's not necessarily late hands. He look, don't get me wrong. He does have some subtlety to his game and does have a little bit of movement to his routes. But he's playing the game with just an elevated mindset. You can tell that he thinks that he's the best player on the field. He's bigger and stronger toward the football, and he's always had an attitude after he caught the ball.
Oh, for sure.
That's second nature for him.
Yeah.
But again, he's winning the physical battles, and that bodes well versus a guy like Gilmore because you're not always going to shake him free.
No.
Which he's going to have to outcompete him for the ball. And he's doing it at a high level right now.
Would Donovan, when someone was, it could be anyone, T.O., whoever, obviously you ran after him, but when you were playing with him, was there the sense, hey, if I just get a little room, he'll throw it to me? Is that, because I want to know what's the trust that Hurts has with Brown. I'm not seeing in this market in I don't know how long. Did you notice that when you were playing?
There's guys that are like that. I remember Kurt Warner with Larry Fitzgerald. Like Larry Fitzgerald just need to see color.
Right.
Because he wasn't getting a bunch of separation. But if you saw him on the right side of the route, I'm throwing it. And I believe that's the type of chemistry that Jalen Hurts has with A.J. Brown. I believe that it's okay. If I see enough color, I'm throwing it. And if it's a one-on-one, it's a couple games ago where it was a really bad ball by Jalen Hurts. And A.J. Brown fought tooth and nail to knock the ball down. That goes a long way with the quarterback, right?
I think he throws it, and I know you agree with this because we've discussed it already. There are times he throws it to Brown when Brown shouldn't be the guy he throws
Exactly.
it to.
Right.
And by the way, that was the
happened.
case on a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have thrown it to Brown, but it was a touchdown.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
But this
But
past
that's okay.
But this past game, I thought that he checked it down or threw the underneath
Right.
throw. And here's the thing that you'll notice is that a lot of times the underneath throw is going to get you the same yards if you throw it on time.
Right.
You may be 2 yards shy, but the throw that you want to throw, you're going to be a catch and hit or catching out of bounds. But if you give it to the guy underneath in time, he can run for it.
Now, have you noticed at all, is A.J. Brown getting doubled at all? A little bit?
Not since earlier in the season.
I don't think so. Not that I can recall.
Interesting.
Not
Okay.
since earlier in the season.
Okay.
So essentially, this boils down to somewhat of an ego game. We are Dallas. We play man defense. We've got our personnel. A.J. Brown, we've got A.J. Brown. He kills man defense, so let's do it. Let's see what happens.
It's been that way with most teams. I just think that A.J. Brown is not the guy that you look at in all of his measurables and you can't quantify why he should get doubled. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yes. It's funny. He's obviously a big man in terms of girth,
Right.
But he's only 6 feet and a quarter. He looks bigger on film.
He's my height
but
exactly.
He's 6 feet and a quarter inch.
But he sees. I think I think we were coming home from training camp and we called it. It was last year or maybe it was OTAs and you called me. You go, did you see A.J. Brown? I go, yeah. He goes, I had no idea he was that big.
Yeah, like he's.
Well, his
arms.
up.
He looks like a short tight end. Is what he looks
But
like.
I agree with what you're saying. The guys who have been doubled in this league have been like the Calvin Johnsons, the bigger, physical, everything, the stature. And you're right. You look at him and say, do you double a guy who's
and
6 feet tall?
you wouldn't call A.J. Brown, and this is no knock on him, the guy's been great, but you wouldn't call him twitchy and sudden. You know, he wouldn't you agree? He's not
Ran
that
a
kind of
4.49.
mover.
I think he has more subtlety and suddenness than most people give him credit for, but he's not like super twitchy. Yes,
I would.
agree with
Right.
that. Yes.
Right. So let's talk strategically because we touched on this a little bit. Dallas will play 3 safeties. That's a big nickel look.
They don't play base defense. I think they play the fewest of what we consider base defense with 4 down linemen,
Right.
3 linebackers, or a 5-2 front.
Sure.
You know, they don't really play that.
Right.
Big nickel is their base
Yeah,
defense.
they're
So if you're the
Curse
Eagles,
We
and
just said it on our
Wilson.
show last
Because
week.
Curse
Yeah.
is 6'4", 220.
Right.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you ideally want to just be in 11 and be able to throw against that, thinking you have an
Oh,
advantage
strategy.
formationally, except that they have
Well,
good
they may
personnel
not.
out of it.
But they'll put
Then
Jordan
they'll go
Lewis
nickel.
in. They'll
Yeah.
go nickel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Got it. So
And
they will
Curse, when they in their man coverage, Curse is the predominant tight end matchup. So you'll get Curse on Goddard in this game.
How do you like that matchup?
I mean, I like Goddard against most people, but it's week to week with him as to how often they target him.
Right. All right. Well, there's one thing that's for certain is that if the Eagles are going to win, we talked a little bit about have to run the ball better, have to stop turning the ball over.
Yep.
They have turned the ball over at a rate that we did not see earlier this year or even last year. It's amazing that they're 7-1, but they are -3 in turnover ratio going into this game. They've been giving the ball away way too often for a team that wins as much as they do. I know people have said to me when I said that on the podcast, well, they're 7-1. Well, they're 7-1. Well, guess what? In 5 weeks, that could be different if they keep turning the ball over.
You know why? Their defense have played magnificently in sudden change situations.
Yes.
Teams haven't scored off the turnovers.
Right.
Like at a large rate, at a high clip. It just hadn't been. The defense have been like rock solid when they turn the ball over. So that's just been, and then they turn the ball over in the red zone too. So they have a
Turnovers
longer
are
field.
They're tough too because they're not always a consistent theme. Sometimes if you have, like, say, Jameis Winston as your quarterback and he throws a lot of interceptions, then yeah. But in this regard, the Eagles have turned the ball over in a variety of different ways. You've seen, like, Hurts for the first time fumbled it on the tush push last week, which he hadn't done before. So it's hard to have a conversation about what they could conceivably do better. I just know that they have to be more careful.
And you know how Sirianni is. He's called himself maniacal over turnovers. Here are the inactives, by the way. One is a surprise. A guy they tried to move. Derek Barnett is a healthy inactive.
Wow.
Moro Jomo, hey, so they're going to draft 5 defensive tackles today, not 6.
Just 5, huh?
Yeah, Calcaterra, Roby, Ojomo, as I mentioned, Boston Scott, as we knew about, Tanner McKee's the inactive third quarterback. So Derek Barnett is not even dressing today as a healthy inactive with all the money he's being paid. Wow.
Right. What have you seen, guys, in the limited? They're starting to get Nolan Smith on the field a little bit more.
He only played 4 snaps last week.
Which, yeah, they weren't playing him at all
They
earlier.
play him
so-
off the ball a lot. Too.
Yes.
I don't necessarily know if that's the best use, but he is small. He's a smaller guy. And that's the thing that's noticeable about Nolan Smith out there. He looks smaller than all of the rest of the
It's funny you
defensive
say
line.
that because I thought watching, again, this is just an interpretation of his tape. I thought watching his tape at Georgia, even though he basically played for the most part on the edge, I said to myself, God, this guy looks to me like he could be a great off-the-ball linebacker. And I spoke to a coach who thought the same thing. Now, it doesn't appear the Eagles are going to play him that way, but
No, but they have worked him out there even in training camp.
right.
They were doing
But
that.
I mean, I would think that with his speed and his athleticism, that he could be a great off-the-ball linebacker.
I'm not saying that he can't. He's definitely undersized to be a defensive end.
Right.
Yeah.
He's very thin-waisted. He's not, there's not a lot of,
Right now, I don't know if any tackle is going to say, "Hey, I need to worry about the bull rush with Nolan Smith."
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be running around the edge.
All right, we're going to start to wrap this show up. We've got to do our player of the game, our picks, and then we may have another friendly wager continued from last year that is going to stretch into this year's show. And when you talk about friendly wagers, there's the other type of wagers you can make also. So let me tell you about this. If you ever found a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't walk past it, would you? So why are you passing up on cash winners every weekend? MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all your sports betting needs anytime, anywhere, so you can turn that sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Bet on the NFL, or MLB playoffs next year, or bet on for a share of big cash prizes in the weekly blackjack tournaments. If you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie. Use the promo code THEBIRDS. That's all one word, THEBIRDS, to claim your deposit match. It's redeemable up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code THEBIRDS to claim your bonus and experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your own home. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. All right. Last year, Jason Avant made a friendly wager on this show leading up to the Penn State-Michigan game. I lost, and I had to sing the Michigan fight song, which I think I've deleted from the internet. No, it's out there if you can find it. I did sing the Michigan fight song at the end of the show. Well, we've got Penn State versus Michigan coming up next Saturday, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but I am upping the stakes for this year's friendly wager, Jason Avant. I propose that if Penn State wins, you have to wear a Penn State hat on the next Inside the Birds pregame live all show long. And if Penn State loses, I have to wear a Michigan hat on my head all 2 hours.
It's got to have a big M on it.
With their actual real Michigan hat.
Deal.
Do you accept my challenge?
100% deal.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't. I was hoping you would have mercy on me.
No, deal for sure.
That is a deal?
Yeah. Do you need me to provide the Michigan hat?
I might. All of mine have burn marks on them.
How about that Michigan polo shirt you wore that one time with the amazing blue?
Yeah, the amazing. There we go. We need some of that.
All the more reason to watch Inside the Birds pregame live next.
They're going down. They're getting beat by a lot.
I will have 2 weeks to kind of prepare for it because obviously next week the Eagles are on their bye week. But yes, we will see what happens at the end of that. I was hoping you would not accept the challenge, but you did. And, well, that probably stinks for me, but it'll be fun to see. Let me tell you something. You were a very humble winner last year. If I win, I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be humble at all. So I'm just letting you know right now. All right, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let us get into our Player of the Game segment, of course, sponsored by MyBookie, our Player of the Game. I'm going to start with you, Jason. Who's the Player of the Game going to be today?
I think that they need to get back to the running game, and I'm going to say DeAndre Swift is going to be the Player of the Game.
Wow, that's a dark horse given the stats of the running game for the last 3 weeks. All right, so you do see the Eagles getting back.
Running to the left, baby.
Is it just going to be inside zone like Minnesota, or do they got to spice it up?
I think you got to run it right at them.
Ooh, okay. All right, we'll see if they do that. Greg, who is your Player of the Game?
You know, I actually did give it a good 10, 15 seconds of thought this week.
10 more seconds than normal.
And, you know, I just feel like the way they're playing offense now, they're going to keep throwing it to A.J. Brown.
A.J. Brown?
And I think he's going to have another good game. I really do.
That's a pretty good pick right now. I don't know how MyBookie would handicap that.
I don't know if he's going to get 125. You know, you never know the answer to those questions. Mm-hmm. But I think their passing game right now works through A.J. Brown.
Let me put you on the spot. Does he get it? 125? Yes or no? Just what do you think?
No.
No. Okay. Eventually the low average is going to catch up here, right? He's not going to get 125.
I said yes last week, so I'll say no this week.
All right. Adam Caplan, who is going to be the Player of the Game?
Well, I'm going to go with Josh Sweat. Now, Tyron Smith and Udoka are both active, and Smith will start. So obviously the neck issue is okay. But I'm not stopping with Josh Sweat, who's the most underappreciated Eagle in the year. He's so good. He does everything well. He's been my guy for years. I love his whole story. How his football career came this close to ending in high school, and he just has persevered. I know people say he still has that hitch, but such a great football player. And this is a big key today because you guys said Tyron Smith is not the same player. I'll take your advice. I'm going with Josh Sweat. I think the right defensive end.
I think Sweat has reached a level where I don't even think we need to couch the whole the left tackle's neck. I mean, if he was completely healthy, Tyron Smith, I would say that's still a problem he's going to have to deal with.
I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. All right, that's probably all we're going to agree on. My Player of the Game is going to be CeeDee Lamb because I'm a Missouri guy. You gotta show me that you're going to do something different. And CeeDee Lamb has eaten up the Eagles for lunch. So CeeDee Lamb is my pick for player of the game. We will get into the game picks. Remember, according to my bookie, Eagles 3-point favorites with a total of 47 on the money line, minus 160. Everybody is 7-1 in their picks. I'm 6-2. I may need to make up some ground.
Uh-oh.
So Jason, I'll start with you. Who wins this game?
Birds at home, Eagles 30, Cowgirls 24.
30-24. All right, you're going over. Eagles cover in the over.
What was the total?
The total is 47.
7, okay.
Jason picked a 54 total, so that's a higher scoring game than they might think. All right, Greg, who wins?
I know I picked the Eagles, but I did struggle with this a lot, and I can't
Remembering it or just the actual score?
I can't remember.
You picked the Eagles to win 23-20.
So what do
There
you
you go.
what do you because you think it obviously you're struggling with picking game. Why do you think the Eagles might have a challenge in the hand?
You know, I think the Cowboy defense is good. It's really good. Can be really good.
Yeah.
Now, again, you know, there's so many. This is one of those games where I kept coming back to all the potential variables, and I just really couldn't come up with, you know, something I felt strongly about from a conviction perspective. So, you know, I hate picking games based on who's at home and who's away, but that factors in.
Oh, it certainly does,
That
yes.
certainly factors in, and this is a tough place to play, as you know.
Yeah.
So I think I ended up going with the Eagles.
All right, yeah, you went with the Eagles in a push because they're 3-point favorites.
Yeah,
The Eagles win by
yeah.
3, a little low scoring to your defensive point.
Yeah.
A 43 total when the total is 47. Adam, who wins tonight?
I've got it. Eagles 27, Cowgirls 23.
Oh, you went over. You're Mr. Over today.
Oh yeah, Tech over 47. Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
All
Rarely
right.
do.
See,
but
I was
yes.
going to pick that score, but you picked it just before I did.
Oh,
And I
okay.
didn't want to
All
pick
right.
the same score.
Gotcha.
That's fine.
All right, so all three got the Eagles winning. Then it comes down to me, and why you guys got to do me like that? Like, you put me on an island?
And they already know from our Friday show, people already came after you with knives.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys right now are going to come in playing very well and have probably more resources to hit the Eagles where it hurts in the secondary than other teams that the Eagles have been able to withstand, like Washington Commanders. So I see the Cowboys winning 31-23.
And I thought
in
about
this
that
game.
too, but yeah.
You thought about it, but you didn't have the courage of
No, I
conviction
didn't.
like I did.
I didn't. I'll be the first to admit it.
Jeff,
okay.
are you?
You guys are forgetting about one element.
So are you thinking here the Eagles are in trouble in the back end?
Yes,
That's the
basically what I'm
matchup.
saying. That's why I
where
picked
they're
a
in trouble.
high-scoring
Yeah.
game.
What's the element?
And I do think the Eagles will
Defensive
struggle
line.
at times.
I agree.
offensively.
No, I agree.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Big thanks as always to Ocean Casino Resort, My Bookie, Sky Motor Cars, BetterHelp, PHL Sports Nation, and of course, our friends here at Fringe Bar on 140
Awesome place.
North Columbus Ave. What a great place. Can't wait to dive into the food after this, the drinks, the huge 50-foot screen, and the 250-seat stadium. What a great place to come watch all Eagles games this year. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Make sure you check out our coverage right after the game on insidethebirds.com from Andrew DeCecco. And, of course, Inside the Birds post-game live with myself, with Adam, and former Eagle tight end Clay Harbor. It'll be on all of our social media platforms, including YouTube. For Jason Avant, Greg Cosell, and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching another Inside the Birds pregame live here from Fringe Bar and Grill. Enjoy the game!